So this is a review of Transformers: The Last Night. Um, I'm recording this out of sync of my normal recording time, and Wendell is not present because I had an opportunity to see it earlier than usual in a daytime screening with a small audience. So I figured I'd pull the trigger on that and be able to recount my thoughts and really be able to enjoy the movie in a controlled audience where I wouldn't have, the casual fans and stuff like that laughing at every poo joke and toilet humor that most Michael Bay films are known for, and what I've had to deal with in the past, usually when I would see these movies, probably the second or third time. This is also give me an opportunity to now see the movie, break it down in this review here, see it again with Wendell later, and then really have a good, proper second opinion maybe afterwards. But this is essentially my review of Transformers: The Last Night, fresh in my mind. Literally saw it only a couple hours ago, and what I think of it, and and all of that. Because man, I guess the best way to sum it up, it's a lot of movie. Um, it's not to say that I hate it. It's not to say that I like it. It's just a lot of a movie, I guess is the best way to put it. And I'll break into it as I slowly go through it. Now, leading up to this movie, I tried to avoid as many trailers as possible. I think I watched one or two, and I watched, whatever trailers I would see when I would go to see movies in theaters. I know when I went to see Wonder Woman, they had the Transformers trailer, and when I went to go see Batman the Lego movie, they had it also. So some of those I already kind of knew a little bit of what I was getting into. And of course, as I always call toy spoilers, which is, you have toys that kind of also flesh out a little bit of what's going on. So I had a lot of that going into it. So to start with the review, I'm going to say this right now. This whole review is filled with spoilers. So warning ahead, a lot of spoilers. If you have not seen the movie and want to go into it not knowing a thing, I suggest you don't read. Yeah, I suggest you don't listen to this. So to go into it, the movie pretty much opens up with like the past few Transform movies, where it opens up with some from the past. Oh, there's something from the past, and it starts with King Arthur and his knights. So the Round Table and all of that, and showing them fighting some obviously some ogres or obviously like offlanders and stuff like that. Some war that wasn't really specified too deeply in this movie, which is going to be a common thing. There's a lot of editing that's done in this movie that clearly shows that there was lines of dialogue that would explain stuff or something that clearly get cut out. This movie's riddled with that, and I'll bring it up more as I get into the movie. So we have them, King Arthur and his knights. It's England. It's the 14. I think it was 480. A.D. Um, and they're fighting against these the opposition, and they're losing. And King Arthur's always ensuring, don't worry, Merlin's going to get here and he's going to turn the tide. And they're all questioning Merlin and calling him just a drunk. And then, typical Michael Bay fashion, comedy scenes, Merlin is seen far away drinking and staying on a camera shot of him out drinking and finishing the bottle longer than it needed to. And then a bunch of jump cuts later of him again drinking out of shot and then back into what he was normally doing again. The weird Michael Bay humor of editing, when it comes to that kind of humor. It's always that kind of stuff. Merlin apparently, you know, he knew the location of some kind of ark-like ship that was crashed in the side of a mountain where there was a bunch of Cybertronian knights. He tries to convince them to help him out. They give him this magical staff, and he uses, that staff as a form of power. And the Gestalt team of Dragonstorm that we know from the toys. This character's never named in the movie, but we know the character Dragonstorm from the toys. Uh, Combines from a whole bunch of different knights, and the toy itself is only two to my knowledge at the moment. But in the movie, we're shown that a multiple knights are used to make this gigantic, three-headed dragon that helps comes with Merlin and helps turn the tide, and Camelot is saved, and blah blah blah. Then it fast forwards to the present day. and we're kind of like, brought up to speed after what happened from the last movie. There is a little bit of, the problem with this movie is as we go more deep into it, I start questioning the overall continuity of the Transformers movie universe. But so far, it looks like they're trying, at least at the beginning of the movie. I mean, in all honesty, going into that first 15 minutes of the movie with the King Arthur stuff, I kind of dug it. I thought it was kind of cool. I thought the action was pretty cool. I thought the way it was done. I think that the actors that they got for the Knights of the Round Table are a lot better than most of the actors in this movie in terms of acting. And I'll get into that more later as I get into some of the individuals of the characters. So we have present day Earth, and Optimus Prime is obviously absent in space, and we're shown that more Transformers keep arriving to Earth to make trouble and everything. And there's some good ones, but they're mostly bad ones. We have this like new form of like anti-Transformer you know army team. In the first movie they didn't really have a direct name for it, but in this one it's the TRF, the Transformer Reaction Force, um, which is not led by a now dead dead Kelsey Grammer. It's led by a whole bunch of new faceless actors and Josh Duhamel. Oh, now he's the questioning himself kind of villain anti-hero, trying to find out where he is in this. We're shown that Agent Simmons, or Seymour Simmons, whatever we know of him, he's hiding out in Cuba right now with Topspin, who, yay, one of the Wreckers is alive. So, and the funny thing is everything that we get of Agent Simmons, I almost felt it was all filmed in one day, in one corner of one scene in this Cuba scene, and it's spread throughout the movie. But I'll touch on it later. Um, and then we're just shown, like, yeah, man, Chicago was really messed up, and there's a lot of like these Ed 209 droids from the TRF that are moving around looking for Transformers. We're introduced to a group of children, which again are just terribly acting children that are just, I don't know. I've never been a fan of kid actors in general, and when you do have kid actors, when it's ones that are just reading their lines, it's just, oh, whatever. And so, these kids, they go into the closed off area of Chicago, which they weren't supposed to go into because that's where all the damage was and everything. They run into Isabella, who's our female main character. That's the young girl that we see in the trailers. More bad acting ensues. Just to touch on the character of Isabella, the actress that plays her, no offense to her, terrible. She's not that good an actor. The lines are pretty bad, and Isabella throughout the movie really doesn't serve much of a purpose. Luckily, if the one thing that the trailer of this movie lied to us about is it made us think that she had a bigger role in this movie, she really has a super minor to almost non-existent role in this movie, and she almost is kind of swept up under the rug in a majority of it. But we'll get into that afterwards. So we learn that Isabella has been hiding in the ruins of Chicago. She doesn't have a family. Her only family is this transformer named Canopy, which is this transformer that's like made out of like garbage more or less, that just covers her and protects her and keeps her camouflage from the sky views of all these TRF drones. And she has Squeaks, that's her little R2D2, I don't know what you want to call him, companion. Reminds me a little bit of a fusion of Scooter from the GoBots and R2D2, I guess. Obviously Canopy gets killed by the TRF. That's was shown in the trailer. Um, that makes a big emotional scene. She's crying. Canopy's dead. It's her family. She keeps saying it was her only family, but I guess Squeaks, because he doesn't speak English, he doesn't count his family. He's more of a dog, I guess. Then Bumblebee comes and rescues her. Cade shows up, and then they kind of just have their exchange here and there. Cade is obviously just inspecting any forms of damage for any Transformers that are around there, seeing if there's anyone that's alive. He comes across one of these dying knights that gives him this medallion that's like, ooh, what is that? Um, and then we find out later on it's going to be something important, but Cade gets this medallion, and we're just shown, oh, by the way, Decepticon Barricade has been like watching them from afar and reporting to Megatron, and supposedly, that medallion that Cade got, Cade Yeager, which is played by Marky Mark, or Mark Wahlberg. Um, it's something very important. We don't know what it is at that moment. So, nothing. Again, this scene, okay action, nothing too special. It has that stupid thing that we've seen in some of the trailers where Bumblebee comes apart, like literally comes apart at every joint, and is able to like somehow have sentience in all of these joints and kick butt and then go back together. It kind of spits in the face of how the concept of sparks work, or like characters that get they get stabbed in the arm or they get stabbed in the chest, and somehow it means something. But here's Bumblebee like coming apart and going back together like it's nothing. And it's kind of funny because they kind of missed out because they had a line not too long ago called the Robot Mashers, where it was like Transformers that come apart and you can mix and match pieces. And the line didn't do well, and it got discontinued before this movie came out. But I almost feel like they missed an opportunity that they could have done a Bumblebee toy with that line. But this is literally what it is. Bumblebee, like from his head, his torso, his arms, his legs, his biceps, all of it come apart and become sentient individual pieces that can attack anyone that threatens them, and then reattach like it's nothing, like I don't know, like a Microman Micronaut, with magnetic pieces that just reattach together. And I found that so stupid. Again, it's just you try to find the science in the science fiction. I always try to say, if there's some kind of science behind it, and if there's some kind of consistency, and something like this kind of just makes me go, what is the story? Like, there's no rules with this movie, and we have Kate. Now Kate is more or less just the same character who's just, he's just this frustrated individual. Um, and again, this girl Isabella that we were introduced to, that's just I don't know what they were trying to do with her, but we'll get into it more later in the movie. So that scene, not much going on. We are introduced to Megatron again, who's somehow not Galvatron anymore. Somehow has a new body yet again, never explained. But at least, yay, voiced by Frank Welker, so that's a plus, right? Um, so then they pretty much, establish that, Optimus Prime has been floating. It goes to a space scene. Optimus, who at the end of the last movie went into space, and we didn't know what happened to him. So now he went into space, and somehow he couldn't get very far, and he kind of like froze in space, and he's just kind of this like frozen husk just floating in space. Although luckily, by some luck, he crashes on Cybertron on the way there, even though he was a frozen husk that really had no direction because he was like in a coma or a stasis lock of some kind. Crashes on the planet, looks around. Cybertron's all messed up, of course, has that very Gobatron look to it. Um, and then he's confronted by the creator. And here's the weird thing about Quintessa that we're introduced to. We're just told she's the creator. She yells at Prime. She corrupts him. Like she just like just touches him and turns him into like an evil Optimus Prime called Nemesis Prime, which is cool that they kind of at least used a different name for this Optimus, and just instead of it just being an evil Optimus Prime, they actually gave him that title. Um, but we're not really given a big backstory with Quintessa at all. We're not given an origin story. We're not given an explanation, a flashback, or nothing. It's just we have to readily accept that this sorceress, kind of metallic sorceress female character, who just appears out of nowhere, is the creator and just has this, power and everything. And then she name drops Unicron, the Chaos Bringer, to bring Cybertron back to life. And we're kind of, and that made me raise an eyebrow and went, oh, okay, I guess they're going to go in that direction. Um, Kind of a cool scene. Visually looked nice, but not much was going on. A lot of that we kind of saw in the trailers. That was one of the reused scenes over and over in the trailers, was that scene with her with Optimus and then corrupting him and stuff and making him, my maker, I will follow you, and all that stuff. So whatever. Quintessa looks kind of cool. Um, but again, not really fleshed out at all. They don't really touch up much about her. We just have to readily accept that this female robot thing, I guess, or maybe it's organic. Is it a quintesson? It's hard to tell what the movies are really trying to do here. It doesn't have multiple faces. It's just kind of a floating female robot thing. Um, so yeah. Anyways, getting back to Lennox, we're back on Earth again. Again, there's so many, like just the cuts back and forth, so many things, and it's night and day and night and day. So we get back to Lennox, who again is going to a meeting, and we're introduced to yet again General Morshower, who was quite a consistent character within the movie universe. Uh, I think he's one of the few. I think he's been in three. At this point, he's been in four of the five movies. I don't think he was in the last one, but and all played by the same actor at the same time too. So they kept kind of like a consistency. So he goes to see him in a meeting, and they talk about how the alien technology from Earth, and mixing with Transformer technology to help them have better weapons and stuff like that. Blah blah blah. So much just exposition of stuff that doesn't go anywhere. They then talk about how Megatron contacted them and wants to have a meeting, and they're kind of like, "Oh, okay." And so, it's this scene. This scene really confused me because it set up something that seemed interesting, but then it all kind of falls apart later. So they meet with Megatron, and you have to keep in mind, like, Lennox is part of the bad guy human team right now. So they meet up with him, and they come with lawyers, and they do this silly, like almost like Dragon's Den, you know, like in the middle of nowhere too. Like they set up these tables with lawyers and stuff to make deals with releasing Megatron's men. So first they mention, like, we want to take this guy Mohawk, and every time they mention a character that they want to free, like that they captured, that they want to free for Megatron, they show the character. They do a little bit of like a line or two of characterization for the character, and then they even show the character's name on the bottom of the screen, like boom, this character's name Mohawk, and he's all like crazy and stuff. And it almost makes me feel, oh wow, maybe they're actually handling Transformers like individual characters now, and that's why they're showing the names on the screen, because get used to this name, guys. He's going to be important in the movie or something. So first they introduce us to Mohawk, who's this crazy like motorcycle. We're introduced to Nitro Zeus, although the toy was called Nitro, but the full name of him is Nitro Zeus, which is interesting. Who's like a shockwave kind of looking character who turns into a car. They talk about uh, Dreadbot, who's like another like crazy kind of character. Megatron asks for Berserker, who's rejected, and then Megatron gets really pissed, and there's a forced comedy scene in that where it's like, oh, well, maybe we'll look into it, and then they mention a character Onslaught, and again, each one of these characters, when they're mentioned, even the name is put at the bottom of the screen, where it's just like, we want Nitro Zeus, and it shows a scene of Nitro Zeus, and then boom, his name on the bottom of the screen, like, get used to this guy's audience because he's going to be important in the movie. But no, even when they do that with Berserker, like, he gets rejected, that he's not going to be released, and we never see of that character again. So whatever, and Megatron gets that his team of guys that were, okayed, of Onslaught, Mohawk, Nitro, Dreadbot, and yeah, Megatron goes to find Jaeger. He's given the coordinates of where Jaeger is hiding out with the Autobots and stuff in a junkyard. And they were able to find it because they put like a little tracking device on Bumblebee when we weren't looking or something. So Jaeger's in a junkyard now. That's where he's been all this time. He's with the Autobots, Drift, who has a new paint scheme in red. We have Crosshairs. We have Hound. All the returning characters, pretty much from Age of Extinction. Luckily, no one was killed off screen, which what kind of was a thing at this point. So all of those guys come back. Grimlock and Slug are seen in the background doing stuff. Grimlock has a scene that again was shown in the trailer where he's vomiting up a car. We're shown. Here's an interesting thing. Wheelie is back after being absent last movie. Apparently he's alive and fine, and he's hanging out with them too. And I always liked Wheelie, even though Revenge of the Fallen was not a great movie, but Wheelie was always kind of an interesting character. And we're introduced to the mini Dinobots, which are kind of cute looking, but I really makes me wonder where. I'm under the impression that Cade created these things, but they seem so Cybertronian that I don't know. And again, never touched on really. They're just these four little cute things that bring him his beer and stuff. I don't know. It's yet another like weird part of the mythos that they show us, but probably will never touch on ever again. Anyhow, Isabella follows him back to the junkyard. They have a confrontation. They complain. There's the famous line from the trailer, I want to stay and I want to fight them, which made us all believe that she was going to fight Decepticons. But really, she just wants to fight these TRF people because they were also responsible for the death of her friends and her family and blah blah blah. Whatever. Nothing really. That's just like, okay, more human stuff that just really isn't going anywhere, while we have Drift, like, balancing on his swords or practicing, and just squabbling between him and Crosshairs. Nothing really of importance. Um, just really doesn't go anywhere, this scene. And then, oh, what a surprise, Megatron and the Decepticons that he brought, they arrive. Um, whole bunch of whole bunch of fighting happens, and then pretty much within moments of being introduced to these characters, like I said before, where they had the names on the bottom and everything, a lot of these Decepticon characters are killed. Mohawk is killed, Dreadbot is killed, and Onslaught is killed almost like literally like 15 minutes after being introduced. And introduced in such a, what we felt was an important way. So, so pretty much in the end, Megatron, Nitro, and Nitro Zeus, excuse me, and Barricade are the only ones that walk away from this. Um, and as Cade and them, they're all trying to escape. They're confronted by Cogman, and Cogman, from what we've seen of the toys and the trailers, the C-3PO kind of looking transformer that we learn from the toys is a headmaster. Unfortunately, in the movie, this never comes into play. We do see the car that he would, we'll call it his transtector, the car that he would attach to become the headmaster of, but he never actually becomes the head of the car. So it's kind of a shame. But we are introduced to Cogman, and we learned that that he's there to bring Cade to his lord and stuff like that. So then again, another cutscene goes straight to Oxford University. We're introduced to. I almost feel like this scene was trying to be ironic in some way, because now it's Oxford. It's the present day, and now we see horses again, just like the first scene where we had the horses with King Arthur and they're fighting in battle. Now we have horses and they're playing, whatever that England or English sport is with the horses with the golf clubs and the golf. I don't know what it's called. I think it's called polo. I don't know. I apologize. My sport is our hockey, basketball, football. I'm unfamiliar with this one, but so there, there's kind of an irony where they're playing that so vigorously on horseback, and she falls off to show that, oh, she's a badass, and she doesn't need no man, and they try to emphasize that with her, how she's smart and she doesn't believe in any of this mysticism or King Arthur, but yet she's supposed to be a historian and stuff, and I mean and by the way, this character's named Vivian Wembley, by the way, and it's like, okay, sure. And then there's just a scene where, and this is where we're introduced to my boy, we're introduced to Hot Rod, and I was confused because Hot Rod, when we first see him in the movie, he's actually and in all honesty, I have to look into this one. He's some kind of old European car chasing after her. When he finally gets her in the vehicle, and starts driving, then he scans a Lamborghini that's passing by and then becomes the Lamborghini that we're more familiar with. So already up to that point, Hot Rod is now known for two different alt modes, on top of the two different alt modes that the toys are showing us that don't match the movie. So it's very confusing for Hot Rod. Up to this point, we just have right now one Hot Rod toy that matches the movie more or less 100%, that's then been retooled and repainted. But then we have other Hot Rod toys that don't match the movie, but the ones that don't match the movie also don't match this other alt mode that he had before scanning the Lamborghini. Confusing, yes. When you see it, you'll be even more confused, and you'll just be like, okay, I guess that's what they were trying to do with that. So Hot Rod speaks to her in French, and I've been getting so many messages about this, about like, why is he speaking French? Is it because of you? Is it because of you and Hot Rod and how you were born French? It has nothing to do with that. And not to mention, Hot Rod's French is a really bad kind of like, I guess they're trying to like, supposedly the actor who plays Hot Rod, it's a French actor, but it's like a almost like exaggerated French accent. Like he almost knew what he was doing on purpose because of the audience that was going to be watching this movie. I guess I want to just kind of like tangent just for a second when it comes to the audience that's watching this movie. I noticed quite a few product placements of Chinese stuff in the movie. A lot of scenes where there's people on cell phones and they show apps or Chinese websites. So they kind of got their little plugs there. Not as bad. I'll say this right now. There is product placement in this movie, but it's not as bad as say Power Rangers of this year with Krispy Kreme. Which I mean, anyone who saw the Power Ranger movie, man, Krispy Kreme must have paid them big money because they were just pimping that. Anyways, so now we're in England and we're introduced to Sir Edmund, Burton, played by Anthony Hopkins, and it's like, oh, here's Hannibal Lecter, and he's honestly probably the only, and again, because probably the choice of actor too, he's the only actor in this movie that I felt did a good job of acting. That actually didn't seem like he was just reading lines and overacting or something like that. He actually did a very good job as this character. At the same time, I feel like because he exists in this movie to be Mr. Exposition, just explain everything. And in this scene that now we're coming into, we're going to spend a chunk of it, and I mean like it almost feels like 20 to 30 minutes of him just explaining everything. And not in like a cool CG way, and just him walking from room to room, explaining this, explaining that, and people's histories and people's past, and a cameo of Shia LaBeouf's mugshot. Just a whole bunch of exposition to the point that I almost felt like Anthony the actor almost felt like he didn't even know what he was reading. He was just like he was acting very well, but he was just spouting stuff. Probably confused at what he was even talking about. Um, and then he mentions to Vivian, "Oh, hey, by the way, you're like the last descendant of Merlin or something, and of the God, what was the name of the fam? Oh, the oh, this is where it confused me. The Witwickens. That's what it was called. And when I first heard it again from Anthony Hopkins or his character, it sounded like the Witwicky Order, and I was like, well, now we're revisiting this family again. I mean, and it's because also we saw a picture of Sam Witwicky, but apparently that they're all connected somehow, and they're part of the Witwiccan Order, which is this family lineage that's been working with the Knights of Cybertron and blah 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 and all this. It's I don't know, so much exposition, and all of it pretty much falls onto the importance of how important two human characters are, which leads to the talisman coming to life, attaching to Cade, and becoming like this I don't know, sentient armband that just moves around his body, and once again, penis jokes, haha, because it's Michael Bay movie. And how Cade is like also like a chosen one. So right away, Transformer movie, two most important characters in this movie are two human characters that are both the chosen ones in relation to their own mythos, which is like, okay, whatever. Um, and of course, just in time after all this exposition is shown to us, and we're introduced more about more the character of Cogman and his whole story. Up to this point, I start to actually kind of like the character of Cogman. He seems like one of the more redeeming robots from this movie. I guess maybe because he's used so much in so many scenes because of his size, he just works well with the human scenes. He just was more enjoyable because he got so much play off between them. Where I felt any of the robot scenes, if they ever did talk to the humans, it was one line, and then the robot usually just walking away. Kind of a shame. And again, Hot Rod didn't really do much. There was this one scene where Hot Rod's kind of saying his name, and he's saying it obviously like in French, where it's Hot Rod. And, it's the joke because he has an accent, right? And because we're Americans, writing this script, so when they say something in English, it doesn't sound right, so we're going to be like, oh, what the hell is that? But she's British, so also she doesn't understand, even though, you know, or I don't know, UK, English, British, UK, I don't know. It's the point is that you would think she's European. France is right there, like literally right there. How is this something that's weird to her? like a French accent from France. I don't know. It's very weird. And not to mention she's supposed to be some like, rich, noble or something. So maybe, she never took a French class. I don't know. Just again, a kind of a cringy scene. And that's not even me being like, born French. I'm not even a big fan of the language of French in general. Um, and it's just, I just thought the whole scene was kind of cringy. Just like, oh, it's like, oh, he can't even pronounce his name, even though that's his name because of his accent, because he's French. Whatever. So again, Decepticons show, not the Decepticons, the TRF show up and they have to evacuate. So they're like, oh, let's get out of here. And so Vivian has to find something from her father's past, so she could find the staff of Merlin because that's so important. And they end up going to her house and tearing it apart, and yet again another like suggestive sex scene with her mother and her mother's friends wanting to almost peek in on it, which is just like, okay, whatever. Again, and again, when I glaze over this stuff, I have to emphasize, when I this stuff comes up, it goes on for like 10 to 15 minutes. I glaze over it, but this is like 10, 15 minutes. Again, this movie's almost 3 hours, so they make sure they pad out everything. And the crazy thing is, and I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but there's so many scenes in this movie that I'm almost confident were actually cut out and edited. There's one scene at the beginning of the movie where Vivian is talking to a group of people about dragons, and it looks like she asks a question. The scene is cut out, and then she answers the person who answers her question. And it's done in a way that it clearly looks like that person had a line and it was recorded, but they just cut it out. So, I mean, I get a feeling we're going to get a DVD like 5 hour cut or something, which will be crazy when we think about it. But point is, so they go to her place, they dig around, they go through all her father's stuff, they end up finding the location of where the staff could be. So they end up going to the HMS Alliance, which is some kind of submarine that was on display on a dock, not actually in the water, like an old submarine. Her, Bumblebee, and Jaeger, and well, Cade, Jaeger, whatever. Her, they all go to this submarine. They go into it. They kick out everybody. Cogman joins them also, and in the end, Anthony Hopkins' character Burton says like, "I'm not going to come with you in the sub. My journey is done. I've done what I could." So they go in the sub. They reactivate. Apparently, it was an old Cybertronian or something. By the way, who never transforms in this. So it's just like a sentient sub, and it starts going on its own. Goes into the water with them in it, and this ancient sub that's like World War I sub, I guess, or World War II sub, and goes into the water and starts heading towards a coordinate. And this leads to kind of an actual funny scene. Again, kind of adds to Cogman. Is there's one scene where Cogman shoots himself out of a torpedo shell. He goes and they freak out. They're like, where the hell did he go? And he comes back with two fish and he just beats the shit out of the fish and then makes them food. Although I wonder, he makes food with the fish, but where do you get all that garnish and stuff and everything for the sushi, despite the fact that he was literally like, super deep in the ocean at this point. Maybe he had it in a compartment or something. I don't know. He's a butler. Maybe he keeps garnish on him. Anyways, but just a suggested romance scene between the two characters and the C-3PO character making dinner for them. But he's kind of funny. Again, the visual body humor that he has as a character works very well. And one of the saving graces I find with this movie is him. He's just an interesting new addition to the Transformers mythos because he's not based off of anything from the past. What else could I talk about this? No, again, it's there's so much human stuff. I can't stress. Like it's hours upon hours of human scenes. Uh, so ultimately, in the end, they get to where their destination is, which is this underground ship. They get off of the ship with Bumblebee. Apparently, this ship, despite the fact of being super deep underwater, with all this pressure that would require a submarine, they get out of the ship, and I mean they get out of the submarine. They get onto this underground Cybertronian ship that was like in the water, and there's they have no problem with pressure and they have no problem with oxygen. I don't know. Again, I'm looking too much into this. They dig around the ship. They find a chamber where the Cybertronian knights are. We kind of get like a yay, one of the toys actually is in the movie. Skeletron. We get a shot of Skeletron, which is one of the I think it's one of the Voyager toys. So he's there. He's like passed out. Um, they find Merlin's tomb. They open it up. They just see that the staff was just a wooden stick. The Jaeger picks it up and he's pissed off. He goes to check out Skeletron. Skeletron comes alive. Then Vivian grabs the wooden stick. It transforms into now the magical staff and everything. And she's the chosen one who could use it. All of a sudden, Optimus Prime shows up, or we know as Nemesis Prime. He starts kicking butt, killing people here and there. He takes the staff from Vivian, puts it in his chest, and then leaves, more or less. Um, I mean, Bumblebee tries to confront Optimus and beat him up, but doesn't really go very well. Almost makes me think that Bumblebee was going to die in this movie. I always had a theory that every single Transformer movie up to this point, someone from the first movie has to die. And in the first movie, Jazz was the one who died in the first movie. In the second movie, it was Optimus. In the third movie, it was Ironhide. In the fourth movie, it was Ratchet. And by that magic, that would mean that then Bumblebee would be next up. So, but Bumblebee doesn't die, amazingly. Amazingly, he falls apart, comes back together, kind of has this gimmick going on. Um, and so they fight. Lennox and them, we find out we're following them all this time. They start shooting at them. Optimus tries to kill Bumblebee. Again, I'm glazing over because it's just imagine what I'm trying to tell you guys, but it's just stretched over like 20 minutes of bang bang. Tries to kill Bumblebee. Bumblebee speaks with an actual voice. Prime snaps out of it because Bumblebee spoke, which is kind of weird. I don't know how that frees him from the creator Quintessa's control, but it does. Megatron comes in, steals the staff. He says he's going to do, what Quintessa wanted. We then get this whole exposition about how Unicron is actually Earth, which is, I mean, that's supposed to be a shocker to us, but that's kind of was like an idea that was used in Transformers Prime, which I find silly that something that's supposed to be this big twist was something that already kind of existed in Transformers mythos before and very recently. So yeah, hey, Unicron is Earth, and apparently when we were Pangea, when we were like the first continent all those millions of years ago, all of Unicron's little horns were all lined up perfectly, and then because we separated as a continent, as multiple continents, all the horns are separated, and so the staff, when brought to the central point, which is, and again another Transformers, piece of history, we go to Beast Wars where the Vok had something to do with Stonehenge, and it was an energon deposit. In this case, Stonehenge is part of the key of where the staff goes, and and all that stuff. And it's the center point of all of Unicron's horns on Earth, and it'll awaken Unicron to drain Cybertron, which, oh my god, just that one line alone almost shits on all of the stuff that we've been told about Earth up to this point and the motivations of Megatron and other characters up to this point too. Um, so the Cybertronian Knights, they combine, they make other characters, they attack Optimus, but then Jaeger, goes to protect him, and then he, again, oh god, like human character bails out Transformer characters. He gets the Sword of Excalibur from the talisman. It grows onto his arm, and he swings, and he stops he stops these Transformers with a sword. And it's just like, oh god, and it seems Jaeger is the last knight, the chosen one. Yay! So we already have one female human character that supposedly is a chosen one and utilizes a Cybertronian artifact better than any Cybertronian could. And then we have this human character that utilizes. It's just, again, isn't this movie called Transformers? Like I hate how important humans end up becoming in all of these movies. So, yeah. And then Jaeger just says, "Hey, Optimus, please save the Earth, man, because you're cool and all." So they go to Stonehenge, and there's Megatron, Nitro, Zeus, and Barricade, and they're with Quintessa, and they use the staff to activate the machine which controls Cybertron, and blah, blah, blah. And Cybertron ends up coming into Earth's orbit, and there's these stupid scenes where there's this one character that was created for this movie where he's like a scientist, engineer, and all he talks about is how important science and math is, and in the end he's just this whipping boy where it's like, no, bro, science and math don't mean shit. You're an idiot. And it's just, I don't know. Again, another character that didn't need to be in the movie, but they just wanted to fill it with more stupid stuff. I guess just to make the average audience that watches these movies and enjoys them feel better about themselves. Like, science is for fuckers. Like we don't need science. Look at this guy. He's all science and math, and look what that worked for him. Guns. Guns are where it's at. Guns and shooting and giant robots. Although the giant robots don't really matter in this movie, so it's mostly army guys. Because it's the army. So the Autobots and the TRF start working together to fight Infernocons, which is the combiner team that Optimus beats up, that we have a toy of. And he pretty much guides Vivian and Cade, or whatever you want to call him, Jaeger, with the staff to get them off the whatever you want to call it, the floating island it caused because of Cybertron coming into orbit, and it's going to destroy the planet. It's this now the movie just starts dragging like crazy. And I think we're already into like almost like 2.5 hours into the movie with no sign of it stopping. Um, Quintessa starts the resurrection of Cybertron. It starts messing up the Earth really bad. The Autobots start fighting Megatron, who pretty much, Optimus kicks the crap out of. Megatron kicks the crap out of Optimus, but then Optimus like fights back, and classic 86 Transformers movie style, he kicks Megatron out of the shuttle, and just like how Galvatron flew out of Unicron, not to ever be seen again for the rest of the movie. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess that's the last we'll see of him. And then Bumblebee and Optimus fight Quintessa. Bumblebee shoots at her, and she just kind of disappears, and I don't know. And yeah, okay, sure. And then Bumblebee takes out Nitro and kills him. So all those characters that we were introduced to by name at this point have been killed off and are not important. Vivian removes the staff, stops Cybertron from colliding with Earth, but now it's kind of like stuck in Earth's orbit, yet somehow not having any any negativity from that happening, being in the atmosphere and all. Um, Everyone reunites, all the Autobots reunite, and Hot Rod and all of them, and yay! And then they use lockdown ship that they were using to infiltrate this floating island that had the staff on it to get back to Cybertron to fix things. And Optimus does yet again, and I send this message out to any Autobots who listen. Blah blah blah, yada yada yada, whatever. There's credits. Then there's an after mid-credit kind of scene where you see a bunch of scientists looking at one of the Unicron horns. We see this human character dressed in veils who clearly is Quintessa in a human form, and she just tells them, I'll teach you how to destroy Unicron, and then it cuts from there, and the movie's left at that. Yeah, pretty crap. um, Pretty crap. I don't want to say it's a bad movie, but at the same time, there's nothing in it that really interests me. There wasn't like, wow, like a great action scene that was just like, a really like, wow, what a great action scene that would make you like clap or go, I want to watch that again. There wasn't really something like that. The character of Hot Rod was introduced with this like time-stopping bubble weapon, which is totally unique to this version of the character. And it's used like twice, and I guess it's used to be some kind of cool special effects thing, but it doesn't really come across as anything too interesting. It looks like he has another gun too. But what I find weird is so far all the Hot Rod toys we have thus far don't really have that bubble gun weapon thing. So it's a weird thing that's used quite predominantly in the movie twice or three times, and yet the toy doesn't have it. So very weird. I don't know. I left the movie kind of going like I don't know how I feel about this. I wasn't angry like I was when I left Age of Extinction. I found the one thing about this movie, the one thing I will give this movie is that it didn't promise anything in the trailers that it didn't deliver on in a sense. I found that every most of the Transformer movies up to this point would they would show something in the trailer that we would all assume is going to be something really important to the movie and ends up being no more than the footage that's in the trailer, like Devastator in Revenge of the Fallen or Shockwave in Dark of the Moon and the Dinobots in Age of Extinction, who ended up like showing up in the last 15 minutes of the movie. This one didn't really promise anything in the trailers that they didn't deliver on. There was a lot of Anthony Hopkins and his character with Exposition, which the trailers showed. There was a lot of Cogman, which the trailers show, and a lot of Optimus being evil and confused and conflicted, which the trailer showed. And the only thing that they really didn't deliver on, which was we all kind of were shown this character Isabella, who seemed like she was going to be a really big player in the movie, but she ended up not being a big player. She ended up being really something that kind of was used in like the first 10% of the movie, and then just kind of sprinkled around here and there, but absolutely useless otherwise. And again, I don't have a problem with that because, in all honesty, I find characters like that with young actors who aren't really good actors to begin with. And in all honesty, I don't want humans anyways fighting Transformers. When I see military guys attacking Transformers and winning, that already bothers me. If you put a child character in that and in that same situation, that should only infuriate me. Like it's like, oh, hey, hey, it's one thing to have like these grown muscle men with guns and lasers and jets and missiles and everything defeating Transformers, and me going like, man, that really shouldn't be. This movie's all about like putting over the Transformers and how great they are and how powerful they are as these ancient creatures with great technology, and these humans with like bullets and nukes are beating them like nothing. You put a child character into it and it belittles them even more. But luckily, she wasn't used that much. And it kind of is almost a detriment to all that promotion material, because there was a lot of promotion material with her where she's talking to the audience, and that was stuff that was exclusive to those trailers. It wasn't used in the movies, where it's like some say I throw like a girl, I run like a girl, like all that stuff wasn't used in the movie, but yet she wasn't a big part of the movie. So it's very interesting how much they played her up, and she ended up not being that important. Where this Vivian character, who was maybe only shown to us in some leaked footage with Hot Rod and stuff like that, she was this chosen one character, descendant of Merlin, using Cybertronian technology that only she could use. So it's very weird, very weird movie. I don't know. I give it like a 6 out of 10. I mean, it's not super offensive to me, but in the sense that like it does stuff that I don't enjoy about it. But at the same time, there's nothing really there. There's nothing really there that speaks to me. Cogman was like the only really interesting thing, and what I mean by that is he had a few good scenes. He's kind of a fun character, but there's not much really I could say else that really like talk. I mean, I was happy to see Wheelie was back, but he kind of had like no scenes. He was just like here and there, had one or two lines. I thought the mini Dinobots were kind of cute, but at the same time, plot holes and confusion and everything just washes over all of that. And man, this movie throws so much at you from exposition and story and plot that nothing makes sense in the long run. And the biggest problem, again, that I had is that this movie takes everything that we knew of the fiction of this movie universe and just kind of puts it on its head, where it's like, well, did Megatron come to Earth for the Allspark Cube? Apparently not, because then they kind of said, well, no, he was coming here for the Star Killer or whatever it was called there that the Fallen put. No, maybe not. Maybe it's because it was a secret plan with Sentinel Prime and they were going to take over Earth and then use Cybertron and stuff like that. Maybe not. It's just one thing after another where it's like, okay, now it's the Knights of the Round Table and all of this other stuff. And what kills me is we were, with Revenge of the Fallen, we were told that, we had these characters that would go from planet to planet to revitalize Cybertron by taking energy from them. And then we have like, okay, well, if they were on a Unicronian planet, which is supposed to be the alpha, to the omega of Primus and stuff like that, and Cybertron, and so the Fallen didn't realize, who's supposed to be like the same Fallen across all the continuities, didn't realize he was on Unicron's, body, or it's so much stuff that makes no sense, that just, I don't know. I don't know. And again, with Earth being Cybertron, I mean, it's been done before, but at the same time, I don't know. I could have went. I would have went about it a different way. I don't think doing the Earth angle will work. Not because of it's not a good idea, but in the context of this continuity and what we've been told about Earth at this point, and why certain people came here, and how every time it gets changed every time because Michael Bay and these writers that change, no one could ever agree on anything. So the established canon and fiction doesn't matter to the next movie. I don't know. I keep saying I don't know because it's just it's confusing to me. It's confusing that they went about it this way. And the only other thing that I kind of left out in this whole synopsis, because I wanted to bring it up at the end, was in this movie they also talk about how, well, apparently Bumblebee has been on Earth a lot longer than we think. And and Anthony Hopkins' character even remembered Bumblebee when he was a kid in World War II. And Bumblebee was like supposedly this badass, like, Nazi punching, shooting, killing, worked for the Allies back in the day. And he worked with Hot Rod. And again, this is Hot Rod again, has another form in this movie, which was some kind of armored whatever. Looks like an armored car of some kind. We don't really get a good shot of it. Maybe if I watch it a second time, I'll get a better look at it. But so him and Hot Rod apparently were beating up Nazis back in World War II. And the only reason why I bring this up at the end is because the next movie that we're supposedly going to be getting is going to be a Bumblebee movie, and I almost see it. I could be wrong, but I almost see it going backwards than it is going forward. Kind of like how with the Wonder Woman movie, even though it starts as a kind of a sequel to Batman versus Superman, the whole bulk of the movie itself is in a lot of ways a prequel to that. So I could almost kind of see it being the same way too, where they're going to talk about a Bumblebee Hot Rod story, or Bumblebee Hot Rod and what other Transformers will be introduced. It'll be, they call it a Bumblebee movie, but I think it'll be a movie that just has Bumblebee as the Optimus Prime, and then a whole bunch of new characters and Hot Rod. Think of it as the Transformers Robots in the Skies 2.0 cartoon series, where Optimus Prime is absent a majority of it, and Bumblebee's kind of the head figure of it. So it's going to be kind of one of those things. But that's again why I bring it up, because I feel that we kind of have a small taste of what the Bumblebee movie might be through that scene in the movie, which again was kind of cool. Also, I find myself being more attracted to those period piece uh, Transformer scenes, but I think the main reason why I'm so attracted to them is because they have to have Transformers in them for it to make sense. So, where it's like, again, to have Dragonstorm, to have Bumblebee and Hot Rod fighting Nazis, it's just those scenes are fun because it actually has Transformers doing stuff and kicking butt and interacting properly, instead of just being second fiddle to them. Which, if I had to like percentage this movie, about 80% of this movie is humans, and then 20% of it is actually Transformers. And when there are Transformers on screen, it's either them saying one line and walking away, which is a very common thing, or beating the crap out of each other nonstop. I just forgot to mention also, Starscream makes a cameo too in this movie, just his head, and we get a Shakespearean Horatio, Megatron holding Starscream's head, talking to it. He's dead, obviously, Starscream at this point. Nothing too spectacular. A lot of other characters are introduced in this movie, but really just kind of, they just get swept under the rug. There was a character named, I think his name was Jimmy or something, and he was just this kid that Cade hired to like help him with the junkyard, and I guess he's supposed to be a comic relief. Didn't really do it for me. He's just kind of there being annoying. It's kind of like a skinny version of like the Black Nerd. If anyone knows who the Black Nerd is on YouTube, kind of looks like a skinny version of him. Not too entertaining. Um, I don't know. There's, and then Agent Simmons would pop in here and there, but every scene with Agent Simmons, again, if you saw the movie, it felt like it was all filmed in one shot. It's just him on the phone calling Anthony Hopkins' character over and over, while while one of the wreckers just complains to him, why aren't they going to go play, I think it's volleyball or whatever in Cuba. It's, I don't know. It's this movie, this whatever. People told me it was bad. I wouldn't call it bad. I'd just call it uninteresting, I guess is to put it. Um, it's a lot of movie, like I said at the beginning of this review. It's almost 3 hours, so you're sitting down with a lot of talking heads and not much going on. And when there is stuff going on, there's no payoff, which is a big problem I find. Again, introducing characters, making such a big deal about them, only for them to be killed off 15 minutes later. And I mean, really making a big deal out of them, like they're supposed to be something important. No characters really having characterization, with the exception of Cogman, because of his size, of being like a human-sized robot. So he's in most of those scenes with the human characters, so he's actually interacting. Character like Hot Rod, that I should be really excited about, was used as kind of I expected him to be used. Um, he was just used to the bare minimum, and ultimately in the end, didn't really do too much except for some shooting here and there and some really badly said lines. I was also, while I was doing this review, I looked into some old European cars that Hot Rod might be, and I discovered that he was the Citroën DS, which is again exclusive mostly to European market. That was the old car that he was before he becomes the Lamborghini Centenaro, whatever it's called there, the LP 700. Um, but yeah, I almost feel like that's the one last thing I probably want to touch on. I still kind of feel that Hot Rod probably should have been Cliff Jumper. The way that he is in this movie, I feel that if they would have made this Cliff Jumper instead, it will work better, because he really is like a sidekick or a brother, like a rival brother to Bumblebee. And they look so similar too in design, at least in robot mode, that I felt like Cliffjumper probably would have been a better fit. Um, where I don't know, nothing about this character says Hot Rod. But then again, these are the Bay movies, where what about the Hound character says anything about G1 Hound? Says absolutely nothing, if anything. What anything of the Drift character says anything really about the cartoon Drift? Or most, they're in name and name alone, which is a shame. But at the same time, we always go into this kind of hoping we'll get just a small little smidget of G1 Hot Rod, which we didn't. We had a Unicron, we had Chosen Ones, and we had him with a time gun, I guess is the best way to put it. But yeah, that's Transformers: The Last Night. Not really digging it, but not really hating it either. It's just kind of there. Um, I mean, I guess some of the toys at least ended up in the movie. That's kind of a good thing, right? Right? I don't know. We'll see what Wendell thinks when he sees it. Maybe he has a different perspective. But so far, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Nothing too special. At least better than the